The water turned crimson as Karen's scream pierced the morning air. What started as her revenge against the trashy neighbors had become her worst nightmare. The massive python coiled around her legs, dragging her deeper, while her phone recorded. Everything captured the moment her carefully orchestrated plan backfired spectacularly. 20 feet away, little Emma watched in horror as the woman who'd tried to destroy her family fought for her life in the very pool she'd trespassed into. Karen Whitmore adjusted her designer sunglasses and slipped through the gap in the Hernandez family's back vents, her manicured fingers gripping her phone. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine backyard of 1247 Maple Strata House that, in her opinion, brought down the entire neighborhood's property values. "Disgusting," she muttered, stepping over a child's forgotten pool toy. The Hernandez family had moved in 6 months ago, and Karen had made it her personal mission to document every violation of the Homeowners Association rules. Today would be different, though. Today, she had a plan that would finally get rid of them. The pool sparkled invitingly in the morning light, and Karen's lips curled into a satisfied smile. She'd seen Miguel Hernandez installing that pool without proper permits. She'd called the city 3 times, filed complaints with the HOA, and even confronted the family directly. But they'd somehow managed to keep their illegal pool. Not anymore. Karen pulled out a small plastic bag from her purse, filled with what looked like algae and debris she'd collected from the nearby pond. If she could contaminate their water supply, create a health hazard, the city would have no choice but to shut them down. She'd already called the health department anonymously, reporting suspicious green water at this address. They'd be here within the hour. She kicked off her expensive heels and stepped into the shallow end. Her phone held high, ready to document the contamination she was about to create. The water was surprisingly warm, and despite herself, Karen felt a moment of envy. The pool was beautifully maintained, with intricate mosaic tiles and a gentle waterfall feature. "Probably cost more than these people make in a year," she said. To her phone, already composing the social media post in her head, "Illegal pool, no permits, and now look at this health hazard." She waded deeper, reaching for the bag of pond scum when she heard the sliding door open behind her. "Excuse me, what are you doing in our pool?" Karen spun around, nearly dropping her phone. Maria Hernandez stood on the patio, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing scrubs from her night shift at the hospital. Behind her, a small girl, maybe 7 years old, peered out curiously. "I'm documenting the health violations." "On this property," Karen announced, lifting her chin defiantly, "this pool is a menace to the neighborhood." Maria's eyes narrowed. "You're trespassing. Please get out of our pool immediately." "I don't think so." Karen pulled out her phone and began recording. "I'm a concerned citizen documenting public health hazards. This pool was installed without permits, and now it's contaminated. I've already called the health department." "Mama, who is that lady?" the little girl asked, stepping closer to her mother. "Go inside, Emma," Maria said softly, then turned back to Karen. "Mrs. Whitmore, I know who you are. You've been harassing my family for months. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police." Karen laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Call them. They'll thank me for exposing this eyesore. Do you know what? Illegal pools, due to property values. My house is worth $50,000 less because of your family. Our permits are filed with the city," Maria said, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "We did everything legally. You're the one breaking the law right now." Lies Karen waded deeper into the pool, clutching her contamination bag. "I've seen the records. There's no permit for this pool, and when I'm done here, there'll be clear evidence of—" She never finished the sentence. The water around her suddenly churned, and something massive brushed against her legs. Karen looked down and saw a thick, muscular body sliding beneath the surface, dark green with yellow markings, easily as thick as her waist. "Oh my God," she whispered, her phone nearly slipping from her suddenly sweaty hands. The snake's head emerged from the water 3 feet away, its eyes fixed on her with predatory calm. Karen had seen enough nature documentaries to recognize a Burmese python when she saw one, and this one was enormous. "Don't move," Maria called from the pool deck, her voice tight with fear. "Don't make any sudden movements." Karen's mind raced. This wasn't possible. Snakes like this didn't just appear in suburban pools, unless— "You did this," she accused, her voice rising to a shriek. "You put this thing in here to attack me. Are you insane?" Maria was already dialing 911. "I'm calling animal control right now." The python began to circle Karen, its massive body creating ripples in the water. Karen tried to back toward the shallow end, but the snake was faster, cutting off her escape route with fluid grace. "Hello, 911. I need animal control immediately. There's a large python in our pool with a trespasser. Tell them to hurry," Karen screamed, but her movement had attracted the snake's attention. It glided closer, its head now only 2 feet away. Emma appeared at the sliding door again, despite her mother's earlier instruction. "Mama, why is there a snake in our pool?" "I don't know, baby. Stay inside." But Emma was already stepping onto the patio, her young face filled with wonder rather than fear. "Is it hurt?" It looked scared. Karen stared at the child in disbelief. Scared? The massive predator circling her looked anything but scared. It looked like it was deciding whether she was prey or threat. "Your daughter is as delusional as you are," Karen snapped, but her voice cracked with terror. "This thing is going to kill me, and it's your fault for having an illegal pool that attracts dangerous wildlife." "Our pool is legal," Maria said firmly, though her hands shook as she spoke to the 911 operator. "And we didn't put any snake in there. This is probably someone's escaped pet." The python's head turned toward the sound of Emma's voice, and for a moment, Karen thought she might have a chance to escape. But as she started to move, the snake's attention snapped back to her with laser focus. "Please," Karen whispered, all her earlier bravado gone. "I'll leave. I'll never come back. Just get this thing away from me." "I'm trying," Maria said, but her voice held little sympathy. "Animal control is on their way." The python suddenly dove beneath the surface, disappearing completely. Karen spun in circles, trying to track its movement, but the water was too churned up to see clearly. "Where did it go?" she demanded. "Where is it?" Then she felt it a gentle brush against her ankle, then a stronger pressure as the snake began to investigate her legs. Karen's scream echoed across the neighborhood as she realized she was about to discover just how much trouble her quest for revenge had gotten her into. The bag of pond scum slipped from her fingers, floating away as the python's coils began to tighten around her calves. Karen's carefully planned scheme had backfired in the most spectacular way possible, and now she was trapped in the very pool she'd tried to destroy, with a predator that saw her as nothing more than an interesting obstacle in its morning swim. The python's grip tightened incrementally, each coil calculating and patient. Karen could feel the massive muscles rippling beneath the snake's smooth scales as it adjusted its position. Wrapping higher around her thighs, her designer swimsuit, the one she'd worn specifically to look presentable for the health department's arrival now felt like a second skin as panic constricted her chest. "It's not letting go," she gasped, her phone still somehow clutched. In her death grip, the irony wasn't lost on her that she was live streaming her own potential demise to her social media followers. "Do something." Maria stood frozen at the pool's edge, her phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, they're still on the line. The snake has wrapped around the trespasser. How long until animal control arrives?" Emma had disobeyed her mother again and crept closer to the pool, her small face pressed against the glass railing. "Think it's Samson." "What?" Maria's attention snapped to her daughter. "Samson, Mrs. Rodriguez's snake. She showed me pictures last week when I delivered her mail. She said he got out of his cage." Karen's blood turned to ice. "Someone's pet? You mean this thing knows where it lives?" The python seemed to respond to her voice, its head swiveling toward her with ancient, patient eyes. "Oh God," it thinks. "I'm food." "Mrs. Rodriguez lives 3 houses down," Maria explained to the 911 operator. "My daughter thinks this might be her escaped python." The snake began to move again, its powerful body shifting to get a better grip. Karen felt her feet leave the pool floor as the python's weight and leverage pulled her deeper into the water. The beautiful mosaic tiles she'd mocked earlier now seemed like the bottom of a watery grave. "I can't breathe," she wheezed, though the snake hadn't yet constricted her chest. It was fear, pure and simple, squeezing the air from her lungs. "Try to stay calm," Maria called, though her own voice betrayed her anxiety. Sudden movements might make it squeeze harder. "Stay calm." Karen's voice cracked into a hysterical laugh. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one being crushed by a monster." Miguel Hernandez's truck pulled into the driveway with a screech of brakes. He'd been on his way to his construction job when Maria had called him. He burst through the back gate, tool belt still hanging from his waist, and stopped dead at the sight before him, Che carajo. He breathed, then switched to English. Maria, what is she doing in our pool? She was trespassing, trying to contaminate the water. Then this snake appeared. Miguel's eyes narrowed as he took in the sign cran. Thrashing in the water, the massive python coiled around her like a living nightmare, his wife and daughter watching helplessly from the deck. "This is the woman who's been harassing us?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Miguel, no," Maria warned, recognizing the tone. "Don't even think about it." But Miguel was already assessing the situation with the practical mind of a man who'd worked construction for 20 years. He could see the pool skimmer net hanging on its hook, the long-handled brush, even his telescoping pole in the storage. "Shed, help me," Karen pleaded, looking directly at him. "Please, I know we've had our differences, but I'm begging you." Miguel crossed his arms, his weathered face impassive. "Our differences? Lady, you've called the cops on us 12 times. You filed false reports with the city. You got my daughter's bike stolen by calling it abandoned property when she left it on our front lawn. I was trying to maintain neighborhood standards. You slashed our tires," Miguel continued, his voice rising. "You put sugar in our gas tank. You called child services and tried to get Emma taken away, claiming we were neglecting her because she plays in the sprinklers." The python adjusted its grip again, and Karen felt her ribcage compress slightly. She could see the snakes, muscles bunching, preparing for the killing squeeze that would crack her ribs and stop her heart. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "I'm sorry for all of it. Just please help me." Emma tugged on her mother's scrubs. "Mama, Mrs. Rodriguez taught me how to talk to Samson. She said he's really gentle, just scared of loud noises and fast movements." "Emma, no," Maria said firmly. "Stay back." But the little girl was already moving toward the pool, her voice soft and sing-song. "Hi, Samson. It's okay, boy. Remember me. I'm Emma. I gave you those mice last week." The python's head turned toward the sound of her voice, and incredibly, its grip on Karen loosened slightly. "Keep talking," Karen whispered desperately. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Emma knelt by the pool's edge, her small hand extended palm up toward the water. "You're scared, aren't you? That lady was making a lot of noise, but she's going to be quiet now, right?" Karen nodded frantically, not trusting her voice. "She's not going to hurt you. Mrs. Rodriguez is probably looking for you. She loves you so much." The python began to uncoil slowly, its massive body flowing through the water like liquid muscle. Karen felt the pressure around her legs ease, and she nearly sobbed with relief. "That's it, Samson. You're such a good boy." The snake glided toward Emma, its head emerging from the water near her outstretched hand. Without hesitation, the 7-year-old girl reached out and gently stroked the python's massive head. "Jesus Christ!" Miguel breathed. "Emma, get back from there. It's okay, Papa. He knows me." Karen waded quickly toward the shallow end, her legs shaking so badly she could barely stand. The python paid her no attention now, seemingly mesmerized by Emma's gentle touch and soothing voice. "You beautiful boy," Emma whispered. "Let's get you home to Mrs. Rodriguez." Sirens wailed in the distance. Animal control. The police, probably. The fire department, too. Karen looked down at her phone and realized with horror that she'd been live-streaming the entire encounter. The comments were already flooding in, and none of them were sympathetic. "You're lucky," Miguel said, his voice cold as winter. "Lucky my daughter has a bigger heart than you do." Karen pulled herself from the pool, water streaming from her expensive swimsuit, her perfect hair plastered to her head. She looked like a drowned rat, and she knew it. Worse, she knew that her thousands of social media followers had watched her humiliation in real time. "I could sue you," she said weakly, trying to salvage some dignity. "That snake could have killed me on our property." "Where you were trespassing," Maria replied calmly. "After you attempted to vandalize our pool, I have everything recorded." The first responders burst through the back gate. Animal control officers with specialized equipment, police officers, paramedics, but they found Emma sitting calmly by the pool, the massive python coiled peacefully beside her like an oversized pet. "Well, I'll be damned," the lead animal control officer said. "Is that you, Samson?" Mrs. Rodriguez has been worried sick. As the professionals took over, carefully securing the python and preparing to return it to its proper home, Karen found herself facing a police officer with a notepad. "Ma'am, I understand you were trespassing on this property." Karen looked. Around at the scene, the Hernandez family, standing united on their deck, little Emma being praised by the animal control officers for her calm handling of the situation, her own phone still recording her disgrace for the world to see. Her plan to destroy this family had backfired in ways she never could have imagined. But as she watched Emma gently say goodbye to Samson, Karen realized that her real mistake wasn't trespassing or attempted vandalism. Her mistake was underestimating the power of a child's pure heart and the karma that comes for those who try to destroy innocent families. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Karen's face as she sat in the interrogation room. Still damp from the pool, her designer swimsuit now a soggy reminder of her humiliation. Detective Sarah Chen placed a tablet. On the metal table between them, the screen showing Karen's own livestream frozen at the moment she'd screamed about the monster in the pool. "Interesting viewing," Detective Chen said, settling into the chair across from Karen. 47,000 people watched you break into the Hernandez family's backyard and attempt to contaminate their pool water. The comments are ... colorful. Karen's lawyer, David Brennan, hastily summoned from his golf game, leaned forward. "My client was documenting what she believed to be health code violations." Detective Chen tapped the screen. "We have her on video admitting she brought pond water to create a health hazard. That's vandalism, criminal trespass, and potentially bioterrorism depending on what was in that pond water. Algae that could contain E. coli, cryptosporidium, or dozens of other pathogens." The detective replied, "The health department is testing your little bag of pond scum as we speak." David Brennan cleared his throat. "Detective, surely we can work something out. Mrs. Whitmore is a respected member of the community who has filed 73 false complaints against the Hernandez family in 6 months. Across the table, noise violations that weren't violations, code infractions that didn't exist. She's called 911 17 times, claiming emergencies that weren't emergencies. That's harassment, filing false reports, and abuse of emergency services." Karen stared at the folder, her face pale. She hadn't realized anyone was keeping track. "And then there's this," Detective Chen said, producing another tablet. This one showed security footage from various angles around the neighborhood. "Miguel, Hernandez wasn't the only one with cameras. We have footage of you slashing their tires on March 15th, putting sugar in their gas tank on April 3rd, and my personal favorite, you keying their car while wearing your neighborhood watch. Captain T-shirt? Those are clearly fabricated. The timestamps match your own social media posts," Detective Chen said dryly. "You posted a selfie outside your house at 8:17 a.m. on March 15th. The tire slashing footage is timestamped 8:23 a.m. Technology is amazing, isn't it?" David Brennan was frantically scribbling notes, his earlier confidence evaporating. "Detective, what exactly are we looking at in terms of charges? Water supply? Destruction of property?" Detective Chen counted on her fingers. "And that's just what we can prove right now. The district attorney is particularly interested in the pattern of harassment. Hate crime enhancements are on the table." Karen's world tilted. Hate crime. Media about how those people were ruining the neighborhood. You specifically mentioned their foreign cooking smells and complained about them. Not speaking English, even though both parents are bilingual American citizens. Outside something you've never done about white families in the neighborhood. The truth hit Karen like a physical blow. She had been targeting them because they were different, because they didn't fit her narrow vision of what the neighborhood should look like. But she'd never admitted it, even to herself. "I want to make a deal?" she said suddenly, ignoring her lawyer's sharp intake of breath. "Karen, don't. What kind of deal?" Detective Chen asked. "I'll pay restitution for the damages. I'll leave the family alone. But I can't, I can't go to prison. I have a reputation in this community." Detective Chen leaned back in her chair. "Your reputation?" She gestured to the tablet, showing Karen's livestream. "You mean the reputation where 47,000 people watched you scream like a banshee while a snake wrapped around your legs? The reputation where the comments are calling you Pool Karen and making memes about your face when you realized you were trapped. Something else," Detective Chen continued. We spoke with Mrs. Rodriguez about her missing python. Turns out Samson escaped 3 days ago, and she's been searching everywhere. She was heartbroken, thought she'd lost him forever. On the Hernandez family, twice, claiming they had dangerous exotic pets if they'd been sighted and forced to move. Mrs. Rodriguez never would have found Samson. A 7-year-old girl saved both you and a family's beloved pet, because she has more compassion in her little finger than you have in your entire body. To the massive snake, the way the child had risked herself to save someone who'd tried to destroy her family. The Hernandez family could sue you into bankruptcy, Detective Chen said. Emotional distress, harassment, property damage, defamation, they have grounds for a civil suit that would leave you with nothing. But you know what they told me when I asked if they wanted to press charges? Karen shook her head, afraid to hear the answer. Maria Hernandez said, and I quote, "We just want our daughter to grow up in a neighborhood where people treat each other with kindness. If Mrs. Whitmore can learn from this, that's punishment enough." The detective's words hit harder than any sentence could have. However, Detective Chen continued, the district attorney isn't as forgiving as the Hernandez family. You've wasted hundreds of hours of police time with false reports. You've committed multiple felonies. And your live-stream confession makes this an open-shut case. Karen's phone buzzed on the table. David Brennan glanced at the screen and winced. "It's gone viral," he said quietly. 2 million views and climbing. Detective Chen picked up the phone and scrolled through the comments. Karma comes for Pool Karen. Play stupid games. Win Python prizes. That little girl has more class than this grown woman ever will. Karen put her head in her hands, her carefully constructed image, her position in the community, her sense of superiority, all of it, was crumbling around her like a house of cards. "What happens now?" she whispered. Detective Chen closed the folder. Family and Karen. The snake was the least of your problems. The real reckoning is just beginning. As they led her back to the holding cell, Karen caught sight of herself in the reflective window hair still stringy from pool water. Makeup smeared, designer swimsuit wrinkled and stained. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who'd let hatred and prejudice destroy her life, one petty act of cruelty at a time. The viral video would follow her forever, consumed with hatred to recognize it. 3 weeks later, Karen sat in her empty living room, surrounded by boxers and the hollow echo of her former life. The for sale sign on her front lawn had attracted plenty of lookers, but no serious buyers, who wanted to live next door to the house owned by Pool Karen, the woman whose racist harassment campaign had become a cautionary tale shared millions of times across social media. Her phone rang another unknown number. She'd stopped answering calls days ago when reporters kept trying to reach her for comment. The story had legs, as they said in the media business. Think pieces about suburban racism, the weaponization of HOA rules, and the dangers of social media vigilantism all featured her face as the poster child for everything wrong with American neighborhoods. The doorbell chimed, and Karen peered through the blinds to see Emma Hernandez standing on her porch, holding a plate covered with aluminum foil. The little girl who'd saved her life was alone, looking impossibly small against the backdrop of Karen's grand entrance. Against her better judgment, Karen opened the door. "Hi, Mrs. Whitmore," Emma said, her voice as gentle as it had been when she'd calmed the python. "I brought you some cookies. Mama made them, but she said I could bring them over if I wanted." 2. Karen stared at the child, speechless. After everything she'd done, the harassment, the lies, the attempt to destroy their family, this little girl was standing on her porch with homemade cookies. "Why?" Karen whispered. Emma tilted her head, considering the question with the serious expression children wear. When they're trying to explain something obvious to adults, because you looked sad on the news, and Mama says when people are sad, sometimes they do mean things because they forgot that other people have feelings too. The simple truth of it hit Karen like a physical blow. She had forgotten. Somewhere along the way, she'd stopped seeing the Hernandez family as people with feelings, dreams, and fears. They'd become objects in her narrative, obstacles to her vision of the perfect neighborhood. "I was very mean to your family," Karen said, her voice barely audible. Emma nodded solemnly. "Yeah, you were. It made Mama cry sometimes. And Papa got really angry. But he never did anything mean back because he said, "That's not who we are." Karen's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm sorry I made your mama cry." "I know," Emma said simply. "That's why I brought cookies. Mama says sorry doesn't fix everything, but it's where fixing starts." Karen knelt down to Emma's eye level, taking the plate with shaking hands. "Your mama is a very wise woman. She's the best mama in the world," Emma agreed. "She works really hard at the hospital, helping sick people get better. Papa works really hard too, building houses for families. They're heroes, just like in my books." Of course they were. Karen had spent months trying to destroy two people who dedicated their lives to helping others. A nurse who saved lives, and a construction worker who built homes for families. She'd been so blinded by her prejudices that she'd never bothered to learn who they really were. "Emma, can I ask you something?" The little girl nodded. "Why did you help me that day?" "When I was in trouble." Emma's brow furrowed, as if the question didn't make sense. "Because you needed help, and because that's what Jesus would do. And because Samson was scared too, and scared things sometimes hurt people when they don't mean to." The parallel wasn't lost on Karen. She'd been the scared thing, lashing out at threats that existed only in her mind. "Your parents must be very proud of you," Karen said. "They are," Emma said matter-of-factly, "but they're also worried about you. Mama said you might have to go to jail, and that makes her sad because jail is for people who forgot how to be good neighbors, and she thinks maybe you just need to remember." Karen's phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer. The plea hearing was scheduled for tomorrow. She was looking at 2 years in prison, plus hefty fines and restitution. Her marriage had already crumbled. Richard had filed for divorce the day after the video went viral, claiming she'd embarrassed him beyond repair. "I might have to go away for a while," Karen told Emma. "I know, but maybe when you come back, we can be real neighbors, the good kind." A car pulled up in the driveway of Maria's Honda, with Maria herself getting out and walking quickly toward the house. "Emma, Maria Hernandez," she called, her voice carrying the universal tone of a mother who'd discovered her child had wandered off. "What did I tell you about going to people's houses without permission?" "I'm sorry, Mama. I just wanted to bring Mrs. Whitmore cookies because she looked sad." Maria reached the porch, her expression softening as she saw Karen's tear-stained face. "I told her she could bring them if she really wanted to," Maria said quietly, "but I also told her she had to ask first." "I'll walk straight home," Emma promised. "Mrs. Whitmore, will you eat the cookies? Mama made them with extra chocolate chips." Karen nodded, not trusting her voice. Emma skipped down the porch steps, then turned back. "Oh, and Mrs. Whitmore. Samson is doing really good. Mrs. Rodriguez says he's been extra cuddly since his adventure. Maybe being scared and then getting help made him remember how good it feels to be safe." After they left, Karen sat on her porch holding the plate of cookies, watching the Hernandez family's house. Through their kitchen window, she could see Maria helping Emma with homework while Miguel prepared dinner. It was a picture of domestic happiness, the kind of home Karen had once dreamed of having. Her phone rang again. This time, it was her sister calling from Portland. "Karen, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "No," Karen said, the word coming out like a sob. "I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. Do you want to come stay with us? After everything is settled?" Karen looked at the cookies in her lap, then at the house across the street, where a family was simply living their lives, being good to each other and to the world around them. "I don't know if I deserve kindness right now," she whispered. "That's not how kindness works," her sister said gently. "It's not about deserving. It's about healing." As the sun set over Maple Street, Karen finally understood what Emma had been trying to teach her. Healing didn't start with deserving forgiveness. It started with accepting that grace was possible, even for someone who'd forgotten how to be human. Tomorrow, she would face the consequences of her actions. But tonight, she would eat cookies, made with love by people she'd tried to destroy. And she would begin the long journey back to remembering who she used to be before hatred consumed her heart. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity, with people standing in the back and reporters lining the walls. Judge Patricia Hernandez, no relation to the family, despite the shared surname, called for order as Karen entered in her orange jumpsuit. Her once perfect hair now pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of makeup. "Your Honor," District Attorney Michael Chen began. The defendant has pleaded guilty to multiple charges of harassment, criminal trespass, vandalism, and filing false reports. The state recommends the maximum sentence of 4 years in prison, plus restitution and community service. Karen's court-appointed attorney David Brennan had dropped her when she couldn't pay his fees to address the judge. "Your Honor, my client has accepted responsibility for her actions and wishes to address the court before sentencing." Judge Hernandez looked at Karen with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many cases like this. "Mrs. Whitmore, may speak?" Karen stood on unsteady legs, her prepared speech forgotten. In the gallery, she could see the faces of her former neighbors, some disgusted, others curious, a few sympathetic. But in the front row sat the Hernandez family, all three of them watching her with expressions she couldn't quite read. "Your Honor," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I spent 6 months trying to destroy a family because they didn't fit my narrow vision of what a neighborhood should look like. I filed false reports, I vandalized their property, I tried to get their child taken away, and I terrorized them in ways that I'm only now beginning to understand." She paused, looking directly at Maria. "I told myself I was protecting property values, maintaining standards, being a good neighbor. But the truth is, I was a coward. I was afraid of change, afraid of people who looked different from me, afraid of examining my own prejudices." The courtroom was silent, except for the scratch of reporters' pens. "The day I broke into their pool, I planned to contaminate their water supply to force them from their home. Instead, I found myself face to face with a 15-foot python that could have killed me, and the people I'd spent months terrorizing, they saved my life." Karen's voice grew stronger. "But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that a 7-year-old child showed me more grace and compassion in 5 minutes than I'd shown anyone in years. Emma Hernandez looked at a woman who'd tried to destroy her family, and she brought me cookies because I looked sad on television." She turned to face the Hernandez family directly. "Maria, Miguel, Emmy, don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve your kindness. But I want you to know that every day for the rest of my life, I will try to become the kind of person who might someday be worthy of the grace you've shown me." Karen faced the judge again. "Your Honor, I'm not asking for leniency. I'm asking for the opportunity to make amends, to spend whatever time I have left becoming someone who builds communities instead of tearing them down." Judge Hernandez studied Karen for a long moment. "Mrs. Whitmore, in 30 years on the bench, I've seen many defendants express remorse. Most of them are sorry they got caught. You seem to be sorry for who you became." "That's a start, but it's only a start," she consulted her notes. "The victims in this case have submitted impact statements. Would you like to hear them?" Karen nodded, bracing herself. Maria Hernandez writes, "The defendant's actions caused my family tremendous pain and stress. We considered moving multiple times not because we were afraid of her, but because we didn't want our daughter to grow up thinking that hatred was normal. However, we also believe that people can change, and that mercy can be more powerful than punishment. We asked the court to consider restorative justice options that might allow Mrs. Whitmore to make meaningful amends to our community." Karen's knees nearly buckled. Even now, even after everything they were advocating for her, Miguel Hernandez writes, "I work in construction. I build things. Mrs. Whitmore spent months trying to tear down not just our home, but our sense of safety and belonging. However, my daughter taught me that sometimes the most broken things can be rebuilt stronger than before. If Mrs. Whitmore is willing to do the work, we're willing to give her the chance." Judge Hernandez picked up a third piece of paper written in crayon, and Emma Hernandez, age 7, has submitted her own statement. She writes, "Mrs. Whitmore was mean because she was scared. Scared people sometimes hurt other people, but she said sorry, and she meant it. Mama says everyone deserves a chance to be better. I think Mrs. Whitmore wants to be better. Maybe she could help other scared people learn to be nice instead of mean." The courtroom was completely silent. Several reporters wiped their eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore," Judge Hernandez said, "the law allows me to sentence you to 4 years in prison. Your crimes were serious, your pattern of behavior was extensive, and your actions caused real harm to real people. However, the victims in this case have asked for something different." She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I'm sentencing you to 2 years in prison, with the possibility of early release after 1 year if you complete anger management counseling, bias training, and community service. Upon your release, you will serve 3 years of probation, during which you will complete 500 hours of community service, working with organizations that combat housing discrimination and promote neighborhood inclusion. Karen felt tears streaming down her face. Furthermore, the judge continued, you will participate in a restorative justice program, meeting monthly with the Hernandez family and a trained mediator if they're willing to work on meaningful amends and community healing. She looked directly at Karen again. This is not mercy, Mrs. Whitmore. This is an opportunity to prove that people can change, that hatred can be transformed into healing. Don't waste it. As the bailiff prepared to escort her back to her cell, Karen turned to the Hernandez family one last time. Emma was holding her parents' hands, and she gave Karen a small wave. Thank you, Karen mouthed silently. Emma smiled and nodded, as if to say, now comes the hard part. Walking back to her cell, Karen realized the little girl was right. Prison would be the easy part. The real challenge would be earning the right to call herself a neighbor again. One day at a time, one act of kindness at a time, until she could look in the mirror and see someone worthy of the grace she'd been given. The python had been the least of her fears. The real monster had been the hatred in her own heart, and now she finally had the chance to slay it.